Hi, and welcome to the Institute of Catholic Theology channel. I'm your host, Will Wright, and I'm joined today by Kelley Dawson. Kelley, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, Kelley has given a talk at the Institute of Catholic Theology coming up. We have another video that you can watch sort of talking about servant of God, Catherine Doherty, that uh, she'll be speaking about. And so go check that out. But I thought, it's great to have extended speaker bios, as I call them, because it's nice to actually know who's giving the talks and learn a little bit more about them. And honestly, even if a person's not giving a talk, everybody's got their own journey. Everybody has their own faith walk with the Lord, and every single person's journey is so different and interesting. I know we were talking before, sort of offline about, I don't know you in person, like we've never actually met, and so it's like, okay, were you a convert? Were you a revert? Were you just kind of Catholic from the beginning? And you said that it's just boring. But then as we were talking more, I'm like, no, it's not. This isn't boring at all. So for those listening, we're just gonna dive right in and kind of give a little extended bio of the Catholic life of Kelley Dawson. So you are the child of New York Irish Catholic parents, grew up in New England, um, and you were always Catholic. You were I think it would be safe to say you were culturally Catholic, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so what is I know we were talking about your first communion experience, so we'll start there. Like I was sharing offline, just for everyone listening. I'm an Anglican convert, so my dad was Anglican. I was baptized Anglican. My mom was a lapsed Catholic, and we started going to the Catholic Church because there was a discount in the local Catholic school if you were a parishioner.
Nice.
God gets you anyway. Um, and so I didn't know anything different. I was just like, well, I'm Catholic. And when I was in second grade, we were doing first communion prep. And I just thought, this is Jesus. It's clearly Jesus. He's God. Of course he can do that. But your experience was very different. You didn't have sort of this theological moment. So tell us about that.
Yeah, we were sharing my experience of sacrament prep. I mean, it was positive. Like, I'm not trying to,
Mm-hmm.
it was good. But it was more, it felt like sacrament prep for me was like how to receive first communion. I remember we
Mm-hmm.
got to like take unconsecrated hosts home and like practice consuming them and like having our mom and dad like practice being EMs and like that. I remember that being very potent. Like, I remember that. Or first reconciliation was a first you go in and you say this thing and then you say these things and then you say this thing and then you're done. So it's not to say that it wasn't formative, like all of those things are formative, everything's formative, but I didn't have like a kind of a theological epiphany moment where like my mind and heart were like woken up to the beauty and truth of the Catholic faith. That didn't really come until later on. I had a really fabulous youth group experience. For me, it was really great. Um, and not even because the youth group itself was good, although it was good. It was also just being mentored by some really great young adults who
Mm-hmm.
cared about me a lot and were like real models for what Christian maturity looked like a little bit. And I think it came about the way that it comes about for a lot of people, which is just, these are young adults. They're not perfect and like they don't have everything figured out, but like they seem very hopeful and happy. And I was pretty drawn to that. Um, and had some
Mm-hmm.
good experiences through that youth group. And then I did go to a Catholic high school. That was my first experience of Catholic school. I went to Catholic school here in Phoenix, and had a few theology teachers who taught me theology for the first time. And that was a great intellectual experience for me. Um, and it married what I sort of like felt in my bones and in my heart as like a kid who was sort of drawn to spiritual things,
Hmm.
with something that I could like use my brain to think about as well. Not that they're so distinguished, but it was just exciting.
Yeah.
And um, these teachers were engaging and helpful, and sort of, yeah, the door sort of blew open for me. And that was really that was a pivotal moment. Is are those high school years? And then I went on to a Catholic liberal arts college and was really involved with university ministry there.
Hmm.
I was like a total like human kid, like in there all the time, like got like little jobs working in the office. But again, God also sort of showing me uh, and affirming in me like certain gifts I had. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was like at this Catholic liberal arts college, which is great for kids who don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Um, and I was studying psychology because I thought maybe I would go to grad school and learn how to be a counselor or a therapist. And I knew I wanted to do that because like I felt like I was a good listener.
Hmm.
I have good intuition. Um, but then working in UMin in that experience, they gave great leadership opportunities to undergrads for like some really powerful like peer ministry experiences or leading retreats in ways that were very meaningful and very impactful. Like it wasn't just like, hey, can you give a talk on a retreat? It was more like, can we partner and dream together about a
Hmm.
new like retreat instrument we'd love to use for kids here at the school? And like that was creative, interesting, sort of like took what I was like dreaming about with like being a counselor and brought it into this um the work of ministry, and like that was just great. So um I
Well, and
think
that's refreshing to
yeah,
hear as well. Just as a side note, I mean, it's I was involved in a lot of things in the Newman Center at UNC where I went, but it was always like, well, we this is what we do. We always do this. It's like, well, that's great, but what fruit is it bearing? What's it actually? Is it actually serving the needs of the people here? So, anyway,
yeah,
just a caveat, not to stop the train, but
no,
like
um,
that's so cool. That's
yeah.
it's a really great experience.
Yeah, and I think the school I went to is a Jesuit college, and that's also where I was introduced to spiritual direction for the first time, where I had my
Mhm.
first experience with the spiritual director, and that was just so important for me in my friendship with God, in my relationship with Jesus, and is still something that I'm really quite passionate about and happy that I encountered for the first time at such a kind of young age in my 20s. Um, and so, kind of moving on from that, I got a job at this great um, little Catholic all girls boarding and day school in Southern California. And I was the campus minister there, and just such a vibrant place, such a beautiful place. I love working with women. And it was run by the Dominicans. They're from Mission San Jose, and they were just delightful, and like it was such a great professional experience. And God really affirmed in me like, yeah, a passion for ministry, a passion for serving the church, a passion for working with young women specifically. um, so I knew I needed more formation
Hmm.
in professional ministry, which is sort of like what led me to decide to go back to grad school. And I was at Notre Dame for grad school. They have an MDiv program there. It's pretty wonderful. And that was, of course, like intellectually, just this treasure trove experience. But it was also like a pretty deeply powerful experience of community. Um, the program is quite small, And so there were only 12 of us in our class,
Wow.
12 lay people. And the program works such that like the lay people are formed right alongside the guys who are seminarians for the Congregation for Holy Cross.
Hmm.
And just a real beautiful experience of the church, like lay people and religious seminarians being formed side by side has really left a mark on me. And just the experience of being at Notre Dame as well. And so just all of those experiences, like I have felt very called and affirmed to a life of ministry. I'm not doing it professionally right now because I'm home with my babes, but my little kids. Um, but what was so beautiful about my experience at Notre Dame is I distinctly remember, uh, I received a scholarship to go there, and so I felt, not working for the church in a professional context anymore, like a little like guilty, like this great investment that was made, and now I'm not doing it. And I remember our program director, the human formator, she was like, what matters to us is that you respond to the Holy Spirit,
Mm-hmm.
like above and beyond what you choose to like do professionally or not do professionally. Like your your commitment needs to be to follow where God calls. And so um, that's kind of where I've landed at this point. So yeah.
How old are your kids?
We have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and like a 15-month-old. So this is
Excellent.
staying home, stepping away from work is kind of a new thing for us, but it's been good.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, both boys. It's a
Busy
lot of fun.
times.
Those are fun
Yeah.
ages.
Mm-hmm.
Very busy. A lot of things going on. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
carnival.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, you are engaged in ministry of the most important kind as a mother. I mean, if in your domestic church you are doing exactly what you should be doing. So I mean, I just want to affirm that. It's like
Yeah.
everything that you're using, I'm sure, or everything you're doing, I'm sure your master's work, everything that you learn there is absolutely applicable. I've
Yeah.
become convinced of this reality that the parish, I mean, just focusing in on like the principle of subsidiarity and living out parish, the parish is nothing more than a family of domestic churches. I'm just totally convinced of this. And so if your domestic churches in that parish aren't solid, then the family is broken even more than it already is. I mean, we're broken in various ways, but that work you're doing at home, I mean, that bears all infinite fruit, right? Eternal fruit. So go
Big.
mom.
Yeah. Go mom. Yeah.
So it's interesting. You went to public school, then you went to um, high school, Catholic high school, right here in the Valley. Um, then you went to. Sorry, I got lost in there. You mentioned the Jesuits. I'm wondering where the Catholic school was. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Um,
Love the Jesuits.
oh, yeah.
Um, I went to Franciscan University and I work with the Dominicans now, so it's always just
Yeah.
make fun of the Jesuits. But
Yeah.
no, I where was that
What
for
college?
undergrad? Yeah,
I went to Gonzaga University,
awesome,
where and my husband went there as well.
excellent. I have a
Yeah.
couple of coworkers that went there, and they have
Yeah.
Gonzaga stuff all over the place, and it's always fun.
It's a great place.
Um, I heard a lot of amazing things, so I'm glad you
Yeah.
had such a good experience. And then,
Good.
but having it seems like God has given you a lot of different opportunities to experience a lot of different parts of the church, a lot of different spiritualities within the church.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's your interaction with the Jesuits at Gonzaga or the Dominicans that you worked with, or all the various groups that are here in the Valley, the Congregation for the Holy Cross and their seminaries. So, I mean, one of the things that I run into with especially people who are my age, I mean, I'm 32, so like around that age group, is there's all these people that are looking for something that's true, something that they can latch on to. And they have this openness to beauty and an openness to goodness, but they fill it oftentimes with things that are not good for them, um, or that are just completely counterfeits of what's actually good and true and beautiful. But then I also have a lot of friends who are very, very committed Protestants. Like they love Jesus so
Mhm.
much, but they just can't seem to cross the Tiber yet. And it's like, I keep trying. I'm like, you can have your cake and eat it too. You don't understand. Like all the things you love about this particular church that you enjoy, like whether it be this style of preaching or this style of music or whatnot, or this way of praying, it's like, come to the Catholic Church. We have all of these things. So anyway, I don't know if you have anything to say to that, but like just this diversity that's in the church that's beautiful and good.
Mhm.
So anyway, anything to speak to there?
Yeah, I mean, I think um, the diversity that you find within the church with regards to like her spirituality or her traditions of prayer, um, there really is a home for all, and I think that's so beautiful and that's so exciting. I I think that is one of also like one of the more misunderstood parts of the church, like especially with Dominicans or Jesuits or anyone who like any of the religious orders that have like very like specific spiritual traditions,
Hmm.
or specific sort of apostolates or works. Um, sometimes, uh, you know, working in different schools, they'll be like, "So you're Dominican?" And I'm like, "Well, it's it's I'm Catholic, but trying to like clarify that for people, like all those like little misnomers." But I think I think what they're trying to get at is still it still holds, which is that so you've been like what they're trying to say is um, you've been formed by, and now you find yourself deeply entrenched in this community's work, which is either education or spiritual direction
Hmm.
or whatever. I think that's what they're really trying to say. Uh,
Probably.
yeah, but it is super encouraging and beautiful, and also just like it's so the Lord to like make space for everybody,
Hmm.
make space for all personality types, all people with their various passions and concerns, whether it's for education or the arts or the contemplative life, or social justice. I think um, God finds a way for His children to be in His house. Wants them home. So yeah, I think. And as for like uh, the Protestant thing, my husband knows I've been like on a big like Protestant preaching kick. Like love listening to non-Catholic Christian preachers just for like honestly like their artful preaching. Uh,
Hmm.
and there's a lot to learn there. I mean, it's pretty
Hey,
powerful.
I grew up in North Carolina. Billy Graham
Yeah.
is like the evangelical pope. Like I get it.
Someone I've been really excited about uh, and interested in is the work of John Mark Comer. Have you
Hmm.
heard of the book The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry? That's like kind of his big book.
Mm-mm.
He's doing some really very, very interesting, exciting stuff focusing on the
Hmm.
spiritual disciplines. So, like fasting, solitude, Sabbath, like those kind of spiritual practices. And it's
Hmm.
very fun and interesting to hear this, you know, Protestant writer, preacher, theologian get so amped about so many Catholic writers, theologians, speakers who have just been like doing the work of thinking about spiritual disciplines. Like
Yeah.
they're part of the vestige of the church's theology. And he's like, and you guys, you should really read this person. I'm like, yeah, no. But he's doing some pretty fabulous things. So yeah.
Well, and when the Holy Spirit moves and people are docile to that, I mean, the Holy Spirit wants us to be unified, wants us to come together. And so when we see those elements of sanctification outside of the church, when we see those the good, true, and beautiful movements in people's hearts that are just pointing us to things that maybe the church has always said. I love that you're getting so excited for him because it's so exciting. Like I think we miss this.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ways that we can approach that. Whereas as Catholics, one of the ways that I would not recommend would be something like this triumphalistic, like,
Mhm.
well, of course, that's just Catholic. We've always been doing that. Like, get with the program, buddy. Whereas I think your
No.
approach is much healthier and more joyful. It's like, this is amazing that you're finally seeing this. Like, let's go.
And I
Let's
have
do
to
let's get
say,
into this.
I've been so drawn to his work and like what this project that he's doing because he in his well and also his own personality and his own flair, but also in his formation as a Protestant pastor, he is bringing something to the table that we've always known, but he's bringing it to the table with a freshness and
Hmm.
a relevance that I think is missing from
Hmm.
our kind of sometimes like Catholic echo chamber. And so he's bringing it to the table. He's bringing something to the table that we've always sort of had and had access to, but bringing it to the table with like a freshness and a beauty and a
Hmm.
relevance that I think we need to pay attention to. Sort of like we always have this thing for dinner. It's always at our table every Christmas for dinner. But then someone new comes along and like, can I prepare that dish? And they bring it to the table with like some new beautiful ingredient that's like enhancing the flavor in a way that you've never experienced before. And I think um, that is like what is exciting about Catholics and non-Catholics who are serious and kind and assume goodwill together. That's like I think the cool stuff that can happen.
Well, it reminds me a lot of the general theme that seems that the Universal Church is moving in of listening, of actually like caring about what other people have to say,
Mm-hmm.
not so that we can water down doctrine or change the church, but so that we can understand what's in people's minds and hearts. Because one of the things that I think is interesting is your movement towards psychology when you were in undergrad. And I had the same sort of movement. I didn't go that direction, but I've always been really interested in psychology. And it's part and parcel of theology, right? I think there's this echo of the divine that we're like, wow, human beings are so interesting. And the Catholic Church has always been very, very open to all of these different disciplines doing what they do, right? So whether that be psychology or sociology or the sciences, it's like you have a question, do it to the best of your ability, track it down, study it, research it, and then present the data, and let's put it all together. And to be able to do that, we have to listen to one another. We have to be able to have interdisciplinary conversations,
Mm-hmm.
because, as you say, people have something to bring to the table. There's something to offer, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's a very, very important message that you bring up,
Mm-hmm.
especially for those who can get a little too amped about a certain way of doing things, right? A
Mm-hmm.
certain spirituality or a certain, I don't even want to say spirituality, maybe a certain cult of personality every now and then, or a certain way of doing things that it can get stale. It can get stagnant. Kind of like we're talking about with retreats and things like that at a Newman Center. It's like you got to break out of the mold occasionally, and that there's a real diversity and beauty in that variety. Um, so
Yeah.
great things to think about. This has all been something that I've been kind of cogitating on personally as well, because I used to be very much one of those people to my discredit. It's like I had this very narrow view of quite a few things of theology, of practical matters. And I think what I was touching on that I think was right was I always liked this phrase that we're a church of Jesus Christ, not a church of causes. But I think that's true. But I think the way you put it is much better. It's like everybody's got these different pet projects or sort of ideas or apostolates or ways of doing things or spiritualities. And if we make those the center point, then we will get it wrong. It has to be about Jesus first. But if they're at the service of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
then we're not in competition. We're actually all doing exactly what we should be doing, which is being docile to the Holy Spirit, following the movements of God, showing us right in front of us, here's what I want you to do next. Take this step.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Kind of like you were advised to do.
Yeah.
Listen to God. Do what he says.
Yeah. There's nothing, there's nothing outside the human experience, or there's nothing within the context of the human experience God isn't intensely interested in. So he's interested in causes, like, he wants it to glorify him, but he he cares about all aspects of the human experience. So yeah, and I think you're right about the tendency, I think, to forget to be imaginative about what God is asking us to do. And I think the church, there's that great line from another. Well, you were a former Anglican, but another Anglican, C.S. Lewis, has about the wardrobe, which is that it's smaller on the outside than it is on the inside. And I think that's also sort of like the church sometimes. I think especially for people who are coming into the church, maybe it's something that they encounter and then they step inside and they're like, whoa, and I think it will continue to hold us and enchant us and sort of like keep us the more we sort of like go. And again, this is a line from Lewis, go further up and further in. And I think the further up and further in you go, the more expansive it becomes, and the less you can like grasp it and like put it in a box, and the more it surprises you. And so, yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, one way to measure growing in Christian maturity is becoming more at peace with that. Like, that I can't like hold on to this and define it. Like, it's taking me places that I didn't expect it to go, which is, that's what Jesus says to Peter, you're going to go places you don't want to go. And I think, or that you don't expect to go, or you didn't anticipate, and I think that that certainly has been my experience as well. Yeah.
Well, and that makes sense because God is infinite. And how could we possibly pin him down, right? We can't
Mm-hmm.
box him in. So I think that's a good place to end. So thank you for this conversation. Thanks for joining us. And anything you'd like to share as a parting word, or anything you'd like to point people towards, maybe something that's really on your heart and mind that you'd like to share? A resource or a site or a podcast or anything. This is your extended speaker bio. So
Well, I
sky's
did,
the
in this
limit.
conversation, I did talk about that Protestant pastor theologian who I've just been following for a couple of years now. And if people are interested, they can listen. The podcast is called Rule of Life, from his ministry, which is called Practicing the Way. So I have found all of it to be very helpful for my own life. I encourage people to go check it out.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
Kelley, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming on.